What do a pad thai restaurant in Liverpool and an apartment block in London and people's kitchens and living rooms all over the country have in common? The pretty shocking answer is that they're all places where an unlicensed surgeon has carried out everything from brow lifts, blepharoplasties to facelifts and even genital surgery, allegedly. The mysterious woman who goes by many names, including Miss Cindy, the Bleph Lady and the Liverpool Lady, among many others, has become something of a celebrity in certain areas of TikTok and Instagram in pretty recent months, despite plenty of negative press, and multiple major news outlets have been reporting on her dodgy practices for quite a while now. Today, I want to talk about who Miss Cindy is, how she's become a major name in the world of underground cosmetic surgery, and why trusting her to carry out any kind of procedure on you just isn't worth the risk. So who is Miss Cindy? If you watched my video from a few months ago about Jordan Park, or the Lip King as he called himself, you might remember me briefly mentioning that he'd been helping arrange really dangerous underground surgeries for a woman named, I think she's named Luyen Vu, all while he was actively under investigation for the death of Alice Webb. Well, little did I know at the time that Luyen was a much bigger deal than I originally thought, because as you probably worked out, Luyen Vu is no other than Miss Cindy herself. It looks like she first came to people's attention back in July of 2025 when Channel 5 released an undercover report detailing their investigation into Luyen after they'd received reports that she'd been carrying out surgical procedures with no medical qualifications that are at least recognised in the UK. This reporter actually managed to book an appointment with Luyen through text messages in just a few minutes, but they weren't given the address for the appointment until 48 hours before the procedure was due to take place. A tactic that seems to have become common for Luyen as she tries to avoid being caught by the authorities, basically. She's running around from the police. So when the reporter shows up at the address that they were given, they found that the surgery wasn't going to be performed in a sterile operating theatre, but rather in what they described as a dingy flat above a pad thai restaurant in Liverpool city centre. Luyen, or Miss Cindy, accompanied by an assistant who helped translate, was apparently ready to carry out both upper and lower eyelid surgeries, otherwise known as blepharoplasties. Without doing any basic checks beforehand, there was no consultation or asking for the patient's medical history. As long as a reporter had cash to pay with, Miss Cindy was apparently just happy to go ahead. You will have to excuse me, my Botox is like slowly kicking in. It's taking to one side and not the other, so my eyebrows are a bit crooked right now. Give me another week, it'll be fine. And when the reporter tried to ask Luyen if she'd done a lot of these procedures before and what her qualifications actually were, she either avoided answering directly or avoided answering at all. After that, the reporter obviously made their excuses and quickly got out of there before any actual surgery could go ahead. When 5 News confronted Miss Cindy in the street shortly afterwards and asked her to confirm if she was a licensed surgeon or a doctor in the UK, she again refused to answer. It's like a fairly simple question, no? And one that any trustworthy surgeon should be happy to answer, unless of course you aren't licensed in the UK, which Miss Cindy obviously isn't. The story was corroborated later when the Telegraph released their own article on Luyen and her dodgy business. They sent their own undercover patient to check out Luyen's operation, and in the article she describes arriving at the pad thai shop and being led upstairs to a flat above the restaurant by somebody dressed in scrubs. She also said it was a really dingy rundown building. We went right to the top. I was shocked at the level of filth and dirt. Adding there was a table with a leftover takeaway in the kitchen. They weren't even pretending to be hygienic, let alone medical grade. I've been to cleaner nail salons. She also said that Luyen Vu didn't ask for any paperwork or medical history. All she wanted was her signature on a consent form. And the money, obviously. Both Channel 5 and The Telegraph found Luyen's services advertised on social media, referring to herself as the Bleph Lady, and being promoted by various aesthetic clinics that appear to be partnering with her to bring in customers. Once they'd DM'd the aesthetic clinic posting the ads, they were contacted through WhatsApp to arrange the appointment and were even sent a surgical price list offering bargain rates for blepharoplasties, cat eye surgery, brow lifts, lip lifts, lower face lifts, neck lifts, chin implants, labiaplasties, dimpleplasties and earlobe repair reduction. Isn't that crazy? Half of those I hadn't even heard of. This seems to be how most people have found out about Miss Cindy and her services. Social media, especially TikTok, is full of people promoting her services. She is everywhere, showing photos of the work they've had done by her, talking about their experience with her, and many more other people desperately asking for details of how to get in touch with her so they can also book themselves in. Like, the comments are crazy. People just not even doing an ounce of research into who this person is before wanting to get booked in. Now, it's gotten to a point where it's a little bit creepy and cult-like. To be honest, not only are there just a ridiculous amount of people proudly talking about getting work done by this unlicensed surgeon, but anytime someone dares to say they had a negative experience with Miss Cindy, the comments are flooded with people saying that they must be lying and telling them to shut up and leave her alone, and often defending her in a pretty aggressive manner. It'll be interesting to see if the comment section on this YouTube video is filled with that. If it is, just comment a picture of like a nose. If someone says that they or someone they know had a negative experience, that the procedure went wrong, that they were ignored when it came to aftercare, that they just aren't happy in general with the results, or even just questioning why someone would go to an unlicensed, uninsured, underground cosmetic surgeon who is now linked to a death, then you can guarantee that they'll be inundated with Miss Cindy fans defending her as if she's some kind of saint. And these same people will then say in the very same comment section that they've never heard a negative story about her. Well, you have. You just did. You just chose to ignore it. The fan base for Miss Cindy has become so intense that people are actually speculating that these are bots or people working for her, because there are so many of them and they're all saying very, very similar things. They probably are bots, really. Some claim that they know her and that she's licensed and a really successful surgeon in home country of Vietnam. Nobody has provided any evidence of that though, and I couldn't find any. But as many people have pointed out, even if this was true, why hasn't she set up a real clinic and followed the regulations and laws she's required to follow in the UK? If she's qualified and knows what she's doing, like, why not do it right? Also, if she is as successful in Vietnam as people say she is, why is she apparently living in the UK and doing underground surgeries out of people's kitchens and like living rooms? It just doesn't make sense. More worrying is that a lot of her fans don't seem to care if she's qualified, licensed or insured or following any of the relevant health and safety regulations. As far as they're concerned, if her results are good, it doesn't matter how they got them. But there's another problem with that. Her results aren't always good. Despite Miss Cindy's fans trying to shut down anyone who as much as implies that what she's doing is wrong or trying to claim that nobody has ever had a bad experience with her, there are actually plenty of people who have stories about how they've been botched by her and how they've been ignored by her when something did go wrong. And because of a recent ITV news report, it's become even harder for Miss Cindy's rabid fan base to ignore the fact that not everybody's experience with her is a positive one. In ITV's latest report on the world of unregulated cosmetic surgery, I'm a sucker for a cosmetic surgery documentary. Oh, I love them so much. They're always so good. They're often always the same kind of story, but it's interesting. Anyway, they share the story of a 27-year-old woman from Wales named Alicia, who was left needing reconstructive surgery after Miss Cindy botched her. ITV had actually previously investigated an aesthetic clinic on Clapham High Street in London called Luxury Medical Aesthetics back in 2024. They heard that the clinic was offering one-day training courses, teaching people how to do liposuction procedures, as well as receiving allegations of dangerous practices, which left customers with ongoing injuries. Two red flags that I find when it comes to these types of things: luxury. Real luxury places don't call themselves luxury. Celebrity. Any kind of celebrity. Celebrity eye lift. No. Anything with celebrity in the name, ignore it. They actually discovered that luxury medical aesthetics had some seriously questionable practices and standards when it came to these courses and the procedures they carried out. Some of the footage is actually pretty horrifying, and reports from former customers revealed that the clinic was unclean, had blood splattered on the skirting boards, and that many didn't even know they were getting surgery because the way it was advertised made it seem like almost like this fat dissolving treatment rather than liposuction. I won't go into more detail about what was happening in these courses as it's a bit off topic, but I do recommend watching ITV's investigation if you're interested. But what made things worse is that when ITV went back a year later to check what luxury medical aesthetics were up to now, they found that the clinic had started funneling business to Miss Cindy, using adverts on their social media to promote her services. And this is where Alicia comes in. Alicia had seen one of Luxury Medical's aesthetics posts advertising Miss Cindy's services, and she decided that she wanted to get a labiaplasty done through the clinic. Just for those who aren't sure, a labiaplasty is a surgical procedure to reshape or reduce the size of the labia. It's obviously a very sensitive procedure, and definitely the kind of thing you want done by somebody with the appropriate training and qualifications, and in an appropriate sterile setting. But as you probably guessed, that wasn't the case in this instance at all. Alicia didn't actually seek out Luyen or Miss Cindy specifically, but after seeing the ad, which she felt seemed legitimate, seeing people online being incredibly positive about her services, and of course also because of the significantly lower price compared to other clinics, she decided to go ahead and book in through London Medical Aesthetics. She said that when she booked the appointment, pretty understandably, she thought it was going to be carried out at the London Medical Aesthetics clinics. Of course, I mean, that seems pretty reasonable to me, right? They were the ones advertising the services, and they didn't say anything about the procedure being carried out somewhere else completely. But when Alicia turned up at the address she'd been given, she realized that she'd been directed to a random apartment block one street over from the actual clinic. There was nothing to indicate that it had any link to Luxury Medical Aesthetics or that they had other clinical offices somewhere else. It was just a flat, like a normal flat in a residential apartment block. And despite having reservations about the location where the surgery was supposed to take place, Alicia decided to go ahead with the procedure anyway, still trusting the many positive reviews that she'd seen online. Now, she became more concerned once the procedure actually started because it all felt quite rushed. Miss Cindy apparently didn't even measure or mark out the surgical area before starting. Instead, she leisurely went straight in with scissors and started cutting. By this point, it was too late though, so Alicia just went along with it. She said she doesn't draw, she doesn't measure, she just cuts. I remember just seeing the scissors and then them coming towards me, and that was it. Despite the apparent rushing of the procedure, it seems like it went okay this time, without Alicia experiencing any major issues during the surgery or the healing process. But that doesn't mean ignoring the appropriate safety procedures is always going to end happily, as Alicia was unfortunately about to find out. Alicia has said that although she'd had some concerns about how the first procedure had been carried out, she had been happy with the results. People were still singing Miss Cindy's praises online and the prices were good. So she decided to go back to Miss Cindy again, this time for a mini facelift. But this time things did not go quite as well. She didn't go into the specifics about the procedure itself. Other than that, it took place in Liverpool this time in a similarly unsterile, non-clinical environment. So it's not a huge surprise that Alicia quickly began experiencing complications from her facelift, including signs of infection, having wounds that just didn't want to heal. Sorry, I panicked. I thought it was bin day then, it's not. And this is where gambling with unlicensed cosmetic surgeons becomes a real problem. Plenty of people have had good experiences with Miss Cindy. Even Alicia did the first time, at least in terms of the healing process and the end result. But when it goes wrong, and it sometimes will, more often than not, then you're on your own. When Alicia reached out to Miss Cindy, letting her know that she was having problems healing, that she still had open wounds and thought she had an infection, Miss Cindy wasn't interested. She didn't care. She was asking for help, asking for the basic level of aftercare you'd expect after a procedure like this. What she got instead was very delayed responses from Miss Cindy, who finally told Alicia she was away at the time and wouldn't be able to do anything about it for about 6 months. 6 months. That's the kind of aftercare you can expect from somebody like Miss Cindy. You got open wounds, like open flesh, but I can't do anything until 6 months. Obviously, Alicia couldn't wait that long. Her face was infected and she needed to fix that as soon as possible. She ended up paying to travel to Turkey for reconstructive surgery. The new surgeon had to put her to sleep, remove all the stitches, open the wound back up, clean it out, and then close the wound back up properly this time. Basically, Alicia had to go through the whole procedure all over again, with all of it coming out of her own pocket. And because of Miss Cindy's questionable placement of the incisions, Alicia has been left with noticeable facial scarring. A facelift is always going to leave scars, right? Somewhere. But a decent surgeon is going to place the incisions where they'll be hidden, like in the hairline. Don't they do it like in the back of the ears, natural creases, etc.? Miss Cindy didn't bother with this at all. In the ITV interview, Alicia said that going back for a second treatment was probably the worst decision I've ever made. That there's a reason these procedures are so cheap, and that having big gaping scars across your face for the rest of your life, nothing is worth that. And sadly, Alicia isn't the only person who has experienced this kind of treatment from Miss Cindy. ITV said that multiple former patients of hers had contacted them to say that they had very similar experiences and complications. And there are plenty of people online talking about how Miss Cindy botched them or someone they know, and then completely ghosted them when they were asking for help. This isn't an isolated one-off misunderstanding or anything. This is just what Miss Cindy does. She's happy to take your money, but she doesn't want anything to do with you if something goes wrong. This is a big part of why she moves around so often. She's known to have carried out unlicensed surgeries in Liverpool, Manchester, London, Glasgow, Essex, and probably many other places not listed above. This is thought to be by many as a deliberate attempt to avoid being caught by the authorities and to avoid unhappy customers finding her. In fact, Miss Cindy's tactics of moving around so often and only telling her patients where their appointment's going to be, like 24 to 48 hours beforehand, are both things other unlicensed and unqualified cosmetic surgeons are adopting. This is a huge red flag. These copycat surgeons, as the media have dubbed them, are becoming increasingly common and behave in a very similar way to Miss Cindy. Some of them are even pretending to be her, marketing themselves as the Bleph Lady so they can take advantage of her online popularity by those who don't really know better. So now not only are you going to an unlicensed surgeon for a procedure that can result in serious complications, but now you don't even know if you're going to the right unlicensed surgeon. One example of this came out when Channel 5 did another investigation recently, this time into a clinic in a rented space in London. The surgeons, apparently named Marcia and Lucinda, have been marketing themselves as the Bleph Lady on social media, and like Miss Cindy has been known to do, they were getting their patients to sign consent forms to say they were okay with being operated on by someone who wasn't a registered doctor. Channel 5 reported the copycat surgeons to the local authority, but by the time the environmental health officers had arrived, Marcia and Lucinda had run off, leaving behind their medical equipment, surgical items, and the drugs they use as local anesthetic. Channel 5 also confirmed that later the same day that the environmental enforcement agents had turned up at this clinic, the man who they'd originally arranged their appointment through messaged their undercover reporter asking if they wanted to rearrange their appointment for a different day. Clinics like this have become known for quickly disappearing at the first sign of trouble, moving to a new location and working under a slightly different name. This makes it incredibly difficult for anyone to find them, authorities to catch them in the act, and it means that the number of people being ghosted after experiencing complications from these underground surgeries is growing every single day. This is a trend that is making industry experts incredibly worried about the negative impacts patients using these services could see in their health and well-being. One of the main concerns is that blepharoplasties, as you might have noticed by how often I've mentioned it today, is quickly becoming one of the most popular treatments people are getting from these dodgy surgeons, partly because they're marketed as simple and a quick procedure. But leading eye surgeons in the UK have actually pointed out that if done incorrectly, blepharoplasties, or eyelid surgery, as it's otherwise known as, can have really serious negative outcomes, including permanent scarring, infections, an inability to properly close your eyes, and possibly even blindness. In the Telegraph article I mentioned earlier, Dr. Elizabeth Hawkes, an oculus plastic surgeon who has spent 16 years training specifically to perform blepharoplasties, said this about Lu Yen Vu specifically. "I hate when people downplay blepharoplasties because it's so technically precise. A millimeter out of sync and you have consequences. You may not notice it straight away, but long term, it will have an effect on your eyesight and your vision. In 10 years from now, you could be thinking, oh gosh, now I can't close my eye, or my eye is dry, or I'm not blinking properly. Did she, Lu Yen, take the fat? Did she take the muscle?" She also pointed out that Miss Cindy's technique, which involves making a large visible incision along the length of the eyebrow, isn't great either, at least not in the UK, where usually the incision would follow the natural eyelid crease. She said this is a sub-brow blepharoplasty. It's mainly a technique that's come from Korea, and it usually works well on Asian eyes, but it's less precise than traditional blepharoplasty, and eyebrow skin is thicker than eyelid skin, so the scar doesn't heal well and can be more obvious. obvious. Given the risk posed by Miss Cindy and her copycats, it's not surprising that major organisations are starting to take notice of her. About a month before ITV reported on Alicia's experience with Miss Cindy, both the Joint Council for Cosmetic Practitioners and the British Association of Aesthetic Plastic Surgeons issued a joint warning regarding what they regarded as serious concerns that Luyan Vu, Miss Cindy, or the Bleph Lady was carrying out procedures such as facelifts, eyelid surgeries, and genital surgery in non-regulated settings. Like I said, this isn't just some random lady who's done a couple things. This is worrying official associations. This is a bigger deal than even these documentaries make it out to be. They stated that these kind of surgical procedures must only be performed by suitably qualified and appropriately trained medical professionals in CQC regulated premises in England, adding they should be performed in a sterile environment with appropriate emergency equipment and expertise available, appropriate anaesthetic oversight for larger procedures, and access to proper aftercare. And as we know, underground surgeons like Miss Cindy are failing to meet any of those standards. There have been calls from various organisations for the government to finally act and strengthen laws surrounding cosmetic surgery procedures in the UK, as what we have at the moment is horribly inadequate for today's world. The UK's Health and Social Care Act means that surgical procedures had to be carried out by a Care Quality Commission registered practitioner and in CQC registered environments. So Luyan Vu could potentially be fined tens of thousands of pounds and could be sentenced to up to 12 months in prison if she's ever caught by the authorities and found guilty of breaching those regulations. But that said, it's currently still not legal in the UK for someone who isn't a GMC registered plastic surgeon to carry out procedures like blepharoplasties, facelifts, and liquid BBLs, which is crazy, no? Like, how is it 2026 and that loophole has never been fixed? Have the government really not thought until now that maybe people should have adequate training in order to carry out cosmetic surgery? That always baffles me. Plenty of campaigners such as Save Face and the British Beauty Council have been pointing out for years that this loophole in the law and the government's failure to catch up is putting people's lives at risk. The government has been saying for years that they're looking into the existing regulations and laws surrounding cosmetic procedures, as well as what needs to change to appropriately manage the risks found in the industry. But although they've proposed measures to crack down on these type of procedures, to date they're still carrying out consultations with no clear date for the proposed new regulations to come into effect. Now listen, I understand that it takes time to create new laws and to ensure that changes are suitable. The changes made are suitable, but many feel like the government has been dragging their feet on this issue and they're questioning how many more people like Alicia need to be left with infections, in need of reconstructive surgery and scarring for life, or how many more people like Alice Webb need to die before these changes are actually made. But who knows when any new law will actually take effect, if ever. For now, it's up to individuals to do their own research about where they're having their procedures done and who is performing them. The JCCP and the BAAPS, and pretty much anyone who knows what they're talking about, strongly advises people to check that the practitioner they plan to go and see is listed with the General Medical Council, to verify that the practitioner has recognised surgical training, to ensure procedures are carried out in premises registered with the CQC, and that they have appropriate indemnity and aftercare procedures. They also recommend that members of the public be cautious of misleading advertising or social media and cautious of prices that seem too good to be true. This is one of those things where I say, if it's cheap, it's a trick. You have to spend a little bit of money. You have to. And that's why I think so many people get tricked into this, is because they found an answer to something that they've been worried about for so long. They think their looks, something goes wrong with the way they look. When they find it cheap, they are unconsciously willing to look over the fact that this might not be a good thing. They point out that blepharoplasty's pricing usually starts around £2,000. Anyone like Luyan Vu, who is charging significantly less than that, is likely cutting corners that will put you in danger. So unfortunately, until real changes are made to how these kind of procedures are regulated, it doesn't seem like Miss Cindy and those like her are going to stop anytime soon. Like, why would they? Why would they? It has been reported that after all of this recent attention from mainstream media and organisations like JCP and BAAPS, it seems like Miss Cindy might have disappeared for now, at least until the attention dies down. Some people are claiming online that she's cancelled people's appointments and fled the UK, allegedly now going to Germany, but even then, it's not really stopping her. Reports claim that she's been operating out of a hotel in the city of Bonn in Germany for the last few months, allegedly, arranging for British citizens to fly out to her to be operated on, but others are claiming that she's actually due back in the UK at some point in July this month. So by the time this video goes out, she could be back on our streets, your street, or more specifically back in flats, kitchens and living rooms or above restaurants where she performs her unlicensed surgeries. Sounds awful, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see if any real changes are made in the near future to combat these kinds of dodgy practices and the backstreet butchers that perform them. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but that's what I've got for you today. So let me know what you think of Miss Cindy, her copycats, and the people who pay for her services. But be kind. I think we all know that we shouldn't be blaming the victims here. Are you one of the maybe apparently hundreds or even thousands of people she's operated on? Would you ever risk having an unlicensed surgeon cut into your face or your eyelids in pursuit of beauty? And do you think the general public should be protected by appropriate regulations? Or do you think the people who choose to do this are adults that can make up their own decisions and live with the consequences?